Hi friends, Krista here. Thanks for stopping by Books and Jams. Today I'm going to be talking about all the books that I read in the second half of the month of March for middle grade March. It's funny because this year I did not give myself the goal of reading a book a day, but I think my total came out to be 30 books. If I had known I was that close, if I had done a better job of tracking right along, I might have pushed for that one more. Actually, I'm thinking that I might have one more because I returned one to the library already. I think I might have done a book a day. I'm going to have to figure it all out when I add the numbers up and put it in my journal, but I'm not doing that today. I'm just going to talk to you about the books. So I did already talk to you about this stack of books, so I'm just going to fly through them. Aggie Morton, The Mystery Queen, The Body Under the Piano. I really enjoyed that. Where the Heart Could Be by Sarah Crossan, a book in verse about the Irish famine. Fantastic. The True Confessions of Charlotte Doyle by Avi. Not my favorite. Book set on a boat. The Apothecary by Maylie Malloy. Really fun, kind of magical realism, historical fiction. Coach by Jason Reynolds was the wrap-up of a series, the Track series, which is fantastic. Two adult books I read at the beginning of the month, I See You by Claire McIntosh and The Poppy Fields by Nikki Ehrlich. And then I also had the graphic novel of The Keeper of the Lost Cities, Part 2. So those I already talked about in my mid-month wrap-up. I will link that down below if you want to hear more of my thoughts about those. Another stack that I'm not talking about here because these will all be in a Newberry vlog. I did read 6 Newberry winners this month. Well, finished one that I technically started last year, but I have 6 Newberry winners that I will go into more detail about in that vlog. The one that I started last year in March and finally finished is The Story of Mankind by Hendrik Willem van Loon. This was the very first Newberry winner in 1922. Super cool. Read that. I also read It's Like This Cat by Emily Neville. The Trumpeter of Krakow by Eric P. Kelly. All the Blues in the Sky by Renee Watson. This is this year's current winner of the Newberry. It's fantastic. I can totally see why it won. M.C. Higgins the Great by Virginia Hamilton was the 1975 winner. And then we have Secret of the Andes by Anne Nolan Clark. So those 6 books, again, if you want my thoughts on those, you have to watch my Newberry vlog, which I think is going to come out before this video. I technically haven't filmed it yet, but I'm pretty sure I'm planning on putting it out before putting out my full wrap up. So you'll have that one to look forward to if you haven't seen it yet. And now for all the books that I am going to talk about today. I'm going to do the 5 non-middle grade books first, and then all the rest will be middle grade. So I read for NetGalley this month, Spring Fling by Annie England Noblin. I didn't really care for this book. It was too steamy. First of all, I've learned that I need to stop requesting unknown romances on NetGalley because I just don't want to read them. But it was cute. It was springy. It was friends coming back together, like childhood best friends, separated for a number of years. And then the guy, Ben, moves back to town. And they're kind of rekindling their friendship, but then does it blossom into more? Yes, of course it does. It's a romance. It was okay. Forgettable. Not necessary to read. But then I really enjoyed the other 4. I read The Compound by Ashlyn Rawl. I would probably not recommend this to everybody because it's a little bit gritty. But I am a reality TV show junkie, and I felt the same way about reading this as I did when I was reading The Favorites by Lane Fargo. This one, it's just like, give me the popcorn. These people are acting messy. There's not really any likable characters, but it's drama filled and I couldn't turn away. So the idea of this reality show is there's this compound in the middle of a desert and people are chosen to come and live on the compound, and they have maybe what was left from the people before, but nothing else. And they have challenges that they have to accomplish in order to earn things for the compound, to set up their home, if you will. They don't have furniture for the house. They don't have all kinds of things, things to take care of the lawn, and they live there as long as they can, eventually having to eliminate people. The tasks get more and more higher stakes as you go along. They also have personal tasks that they have to accomplish, and it's all for the reality TV show. So enjoyable read. Not one that I would say absolutely read this, but it was fun. It was drama filled. One that I really was looking forward to reading was The Lies They Told by Ellen Marie Wiseman. This is an author. I would like to read all of her books. I'm making my way there, and this was another fantastic read. In this, we follow Lena, who with some of her family members comes to America and has to go through Staten Island and immigration and all of that. I think it's just after World War II that they come. Her grandmother and brother are not allowed to enter the country and are sent back for different reasons, and Lena comes by herself. She takes the job. She goes with the guy that her grandmother got a job working for to take care of his young children. And so it's the story of Silas and Lena. And actually, it's one story kind of about the beginning of Shenandoah National Park, which is relatively near to me here in Western Virginia, and how mountain people were basically kicked off their land in order for the park to be built. And this is the story of what some of the things that happened during that time. It makes me want to do a deep dive on the creation of the national park and see if some of those stories were real. Of course, there is an author's note at the end that does explain some of it. It just was such a good story. We've got an asylum situation. We've got immigration situation. We've got this community of mountain people and this different culture that's different from the rest of the country. And so it's not understood and they're taken advantage of in horrible ways. And it was just such a good story. Ellen Marie Wiseman can really tell a tale and I am here for it every single time. Oh, I love her writing. So fantastic. Another fantastic read that I really loved is The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton. I was very, very grateful to myself last year for purchasing the Broadway in Richmond season pass. So I'm attending all of the different shows that come through, and The Outsiders is one of them. And I wanted to read the book before seeing the show a couple weeks ago. So I did. One day I just kind of set everything else down in order to pick up The Outsiders. It was a reread for me. I read it, I don't know, a really long time ago. But in this, we follow a kind of a class difference between these teens. They call themselves the Greasers and the Socias, or the Socialites, and the conflict between them. And it was really brutal. Lots of fighting, almost like gangs of teenagers fighting each other. And there are some shocking moments in here. The really cool thing about this is that S.E. Hinton started writing this when she was a teenager, and it was published when she was still a teenager, which is so cool. She really had a grasp on experiences and things that these teens were going through. And the play, the musical, top notch, top tier, one of my favorites of all time now. Oh, it was just so good. I'm so glad that I reread the book first, and it was very, very fresh in my mind when I went to the show. It was awesome. I did finish a poetry book as well in March, which was Call Us What We Carry by Amanda Gorman. I didn't love this one. It was way more COVID focused than I knew it would be. So a lot of the poems had to do with the pandemic and the disease and the shutdown and being isolated. And it got to be a little much. It was heavy. I just was not thrilled about that aspect of it. There were some other cool parts of it. Ones where she took letters from 1918 during kind of World War I and the Spanish flu era. And so she kind of made poems out of the letters. She took sections of the letter and created poems from that. I did think that was a really cool section. There were some aspects of this that I really liked, but I'm not keeping it on my shelves, and I'm glad that I read it. I'm glad I'm giving myself this challenge of reading more poetry this year, but it's not one that I would like highly recommend to people, or except that I feel like I'm still learning about poetry, and I'm still learning what kind of poetry I like and don't like. And this one was an experience, and I'm glad I did it, but it wasn't a favorite. And now some middle grade. I don't have these officially ranked, but I'm kind of putting them from ones that I didn't love to ones that I really did. So towards the end are the ones that I really loved, but these are just ones that I read. This is how I got to 30 or 31 books. Who knows? Fortunately, The Milk by Neil Gaiman. Look how short that is. This was maybe an hour on audio. I tandem read this because there's so many illustrations in here. It was such a quick little read about this. The dad comes home late one day and he creates this story of why he's late to his kids. It was cute. It was cute, but I'm not keeping it on my shelves. Another one that was just kind of okay for me was Please Return to the Lands of Luxury by John Tilton. Finally read this. John Tilton sent me this book maybe 2 years ago, and it's a NetGalley book that I need to now write a review for, about these kids, this girl in particular, they live kind of on the dump, on the trash heap. And there are people who live there, but it's on its own little island, and the rest of the world is, they refer to them as the lands of luxury. She finds a doll that has a little tag on it with the name of a girl, and it says, "Please return to the lands of luxury." She is determined to get this. She thinks this doll got put in the trash by accident. And so she's determined. What's her name? Jane. So Jane is determined to get this doll back to the owner. And we kind of follow her story from there as she travels from the island of the trash to the lands of luxury. There are these robots that are in charge of managing the trash heap, and they're pretty dangerous. And so there's some high stakes in there, but it was a cute story. It was a cute story, but not one that I'm going to remember or a new favorite. My Patreon book club book for the month was Escape from Aleppo by N.H. Senzai. Unfortunately, I didn't like this as much as I wanted to. It was very filled with information about the Arab Spring and about Syria in particular and the leadership there in Aleppo and all that was going on in the early 2010, 2012, like in that era in the Middle East. So it was definitely a learning experience. And I was thinking this would be more of a refugee once she gets out of Aleppo, but it's literally her making her way through Aleppo. And I wish this book came with a map, because she just traveled to all of these different neighborhoods as she's trying to escape. She gets separated from her family. There's bombs going off. There's so much danger. I mean, it was pretty harrowing, but I didn't feel super connected to the characters. I didn't feel emotionally tied to the story, and I think that was because there was so much information thrown in there, but I do think the information was interesting. So it was interesting. It was great to have a conversation about this book with my patrons, because there were some who really loved it and gave it 4.5 or 5 stars, and then there were others like me that just thought it was okay. So our conversation was really good about what they liked about it. It did give me a more of an appreciation for the book after listening to them, but it isn't, sadly, one that's going to stay on my shelves. It's going to go. Now we're moving more to ones that I liked. These are like the 4-star-ish ones. And then I have a few at the end that I really loved. So the Millicent Quibb School of Etiquette for Young Ladies of Mad Science by Edwina Candlestank, as told to Kate McKinnon. What a fun audiobook this was. I think this is the kind of book that I would have loved as a kid. Now I can appreciate it for its humor and creativity and strangeness and just the off-the-wall bonkersness of it, because it was just filled with that kind of stuff. But I am one whose favorite Roald Dahl book was The Twits, and this is for others of you who really love kind of Roald Dahl's dark humor. You're going to love a book like this. Also, there's a lot of of course, none of it. It has deckled edges, so it's hard to flip pages, but there are a ton of illustrations throughout as well. So it's one that's fun to read along with the audio, but Kate McKinnon narrates the audiobook and it's fantastic. So that was a fun read. Not a new favorite or one that left an emotional imprint on me, but it was a delight. It was super fun. Another one that I thought was really fun was A Box Full of Murders by Janice Hallett. This is her middle grade. Janice Hallett is an author I would like to read all of her works. I would like to read her to zero. And this is one that I needed to read in order to do that. And it's about these two kids. They're separated. One lives with the mom and one lives with the dad, but they're texting each other all the time. The boy in the dad's attic finds this box that is a mystery. And in the box, they find all of these documents and things that set up this case about this old camp. Some murders that happened at the camp. This is the last year of the camp because of development. A company that's coming in and developing the land, and yet things have happened during this last summer. And so there's diary entries from kids at the camp. There's lots of different documents in here, and as well as a ton of text between the brother and sister as they try to figure everything out. It was super fun. I grew up going to camp and I love a good camp story, and I thought this one was fun. Interestingly enough, in this, there is a specific bird that I had never heard of before until I was reading the essays in here. So I read in here first an essay about a bird called a potu, and its yellow eyes and different things about this bird. It's only in certain parts of the world, but then a Potu showed up in the story, which I thought was so bizarre. Such a weird connection to make between my reads. But yeah, this was fun. It's not my favorite Janice Hallett, but it was a fun read. I liked her foray into middle grade. I thought the setup of it was really good. It was a little bit too long maybe. And it's also set up for more stories of these two kids. There are more boxes in the attic that have similar piles of papers that they can figure out a case. So I feel like this is the setup to the start of a series, which I will read more because I really enjoyed it. One of my favorite middle grade authors is Kate DiCamillo, and she has a few that have come out in the last few years that I haven't yet read. And so I did pick up The Puppets of Spellhorst, another super short one that helped me get up to that 31 number, which I wasn't trying to do, but it did help. This was about these 5 puppets talking to each other and the power of story. They're in a box. Someone buys the whole box. They get brought to this family. And there are 2 daughters in this family, and they put on a play using these puppets. But these puppets early in the story kind of have dreams for their life and what they want to do. So it's kind of fun to see how those things play out in a different interpretation and a different twist than what they imagined. But they all kind of get their dreams, which is kind of fun. This is another one with loads of illustrations all the way through. Really, really good. I love Kate DiCamillo. Another of my favorite middle grade authors is Jasmine Warga. Her book, A Rover's Story, was one of our middle grade March picks a couple of years ago. And I love Other Words for Home by her. And I also like The Shape of Thunder. I really like her books. And this one is A Strange Thing Happened in Cherry Hall. Also a super short one, but this is one of her newer books. I think this might be a NetGalley book as well that I need to write a review for now. But we follow this boy whose mom works at this museum, and he is often at the museum. And at one point, a painting goes missing from the museum, and this boy is determined to try to figure out what happened to the painting because his mom is one of the suspects, and he knows that obviously it wasn't her. So he has to try to figure out what happened to this painting. There is a girl who's a bit of a ghosty, possibly, and a turtle. We get a perspective of a turtle at one point. So it just was really fun and cute and a little bit of a mystery. And I enjoyed it. I like Jasmine Warga's writing a lot as well. Then our middle grade March book club book for the month was Max in the House of Spies by Adam Gidwitz. And I did read this one as well as the sequel, Max in the Land of Lies. And this will bring us into our books, that the final 3 that I really, really loved. But I did really enjoy this series as a whole. Max lives in Germany. He's a Jewish boy who grew up in Germany. And at the beginning of this book, his parents sent him on the kinder transport to help him be safe and get him out of Germany as a young Jewish boy, seeing kind of what's going to be happening. He's sent to England, and on his journey, he gets these 2 little creatures on his shoulders. One is I forget what they're called all the time, a kobold named Berg and a Dybbuk named Stein. And these are, one is a German folklore creature and one is a Jewish folklore creature, which is kind of an interesting juxtaposition as this boy is Jewish and German as well. But he is sent to England, and he is determined to get back to help rescue his parents. He lands in a family where one of them is a spy, and he is determined to become a spy himself so that he can go back as a spy to Germany and figure out what happened to his parents. So this is the story of him entering that process and spy training and his determination to get back to England. This book really, though, is a setup. Get back to Germany. I said back to England, back to Germany. But this book is really a setup for this book, Max in the Land of Lies. He does end up going back to Germany as a spy, and this book follows his journey while there. And I'm not going to tell you more about this one because it is a sequel, but we learn a lot more about Berg and Stein, the little creatures on his shoulders. They play a bigger role in this one. We learn a lot more about propaganda and the lies that the Nazi Party told and how people just fell into it and believed those things, which is the big part of both of these books, obviously. And it was fantastic. This one was definitely more fast-paced and action-packed, whereas this one was a little bit slower going. And I know a lot of people had a harder time with this one, but for those who continued on with this one, you got all of the drama that you were wanting in the first book. It came in the second book. It was a really, really good duology. I'm so glad I went right into the second one and read both of them in March. So, so good. And now I have 3 books that I just absolutely loved. The first one is The Door of No Return by Kwame Alexander. This man can write poetry, and he drew me in to this kid's story in such a sparse amount of words. I mean, not super sparse because it's a chunker. We follow young Kofi. He's a younger brother. He's in school. We see him kind of having his first little crush on one of the girls in school. We see him arguing with his cousin, who's a year or 2 older than him. And the cousin is kind of mean and hurtful in lots of ways to Kofi. We see him connecting with his grandpa and the games that they play. This is set in a country in Western Africa. I forget which country. The whole setup of the first half of this book is really learning about Kofi. He loves to swim. They live right near this river. He's always warned to not go to the river at night. Foreshadowing there's something that's going to happen at the river at night, right? There's conflict, political conflict between the upper and the lower part of his city or his land where he lives. There's some conflict there, and his brother is in the midst of it. And then it turns into people being kidnapped and sold as slaves. And whoo, this was emotional. It packed a punch. There was a couple scenes that shocked me. I was not prepared for. I teared up at the end. Like, this was so powerful. Such a good story. I have read a couple Kwame Alexander books, and I just really think that this man has a way with words. It was so, so good. It was so good. A book that Amanda told me about that I read, another book in verse, which is another reason why I'm able to get so many books read in the month of March, because I read so many in verse this time. But The Trouble with Heroes by Kate Messner was a book about a little boy dealing with grief, ultimately. And he gets really angry at the beginning and causes some damage to a gravestone, I think. And the family of the person whose grave he damages. Instead of giving him community service or sending him to a juvie detention center or whatever, he has to climb all of the 46 peaks in the Adirondacks. He's not thrilled about this, of course. He has mentors that are sent along with him, but he has a set amount of time where he has to climb all of these mountains, which is one of the hobbies of the woman whose grave he damages. And so he, in the process of climbing these mountains and connecting with these mentors who are on the journey with him, he comes face to face with his own grief and works through things. And it is powerful. In the process of all of this mountain climbing and hiking stories that we're getting, he also has this poetry project for school, which is why this book being told in verse was so cool. He has this poetry project for school about a hero that he has to write a collection of poems about a hero. Well, his dad is known as a hero for 9/11, but his dad also was a man and had a lot of struggles as well. And so he had a really hard time with this idea of a hero. And what about, is a hero still a hero if they're not publicized? If nobody takes a picture of it and nobody puts it in the paper, but somebody does something heroic, is he still a hero? And then what happens at the end of the day after the picture is taken? What if the hero is not a hero in all aspects of their life? So it's him processing all of this information, all of this feelings about his dad and the struggle that he has there. And there's a dog involved who's super helpful along the way. They get in some precarious situations along the way. Like, it just, I love a book about grief. And this one was done really, really well. It was just fantastic. So I would highly recommend The Trouble with Heroes by Kate Messner. I love that it's one I never heard about before, but Amanda, she's so good at recommending me some middle grade books for sure. And then one I'm not going to talk about too much, but The 9 Moons of Hanyu and Luli by Karina Yan Glaser was spectacular. And I'm not going to talk about it a ton because this is our middle grade March book club book for April and May. We will have a discussion in May about this book. And so I don't want to share all of my thoughts here, but I will tell you enough to hopefully encourage you to want to pick it up between now and the end of May and join us for that discussion. But in this book, we follow 2 Chinese kids and 2 different time periods. One is kind of like ancient China, Silk Road time period. And he has to go on a journey in order to help his family and it's during the time of the Black Plague. And his dad was going to be taking this trip, but he's no longer able to. And so this little boy decides he's going to take the trip instead and deliver these products along the Silk Road. So this journey that he's taking. And that's Hanyu. Luli, we follow in 1930s in Chinatown in New York City. Her parents own a restaurant and the restaurant is failing and she is determined to help save this restaurant because this is her inheritance. She's going to get the family restaurant. And so she goes on her own journey of sorts in order to come up with ideas and try to save her restaurant. She learns a lot about the people in her neighborhood and Chinese history. There's some artifacts. There's a family that live in her building with her as well. And she tries to set up this museum downstairs with some of these artifacts, and they get to travel to the Met, the museum, as a school, and she gets some of her classmates involved. It just is really, really lovely. I loved this book. I loved the connection between these two stories as it went along. I love Karina Yen Glazer's writing. I think she captures middle grade years so well. And she's the author of the Vanderbeekers series, which I really loved. And I just really think that this book was fantastic. Another Amanda recommendation. And it did win a Newberry honor this year. So this is highly acclaimed, and I do think it's worth the read for sure. And that brings me to the end. Holy moly, what a reading month March was. I loved so many of the books that I read. I love getting to dive into middle grade so much. I mean, I read so many. I'm just going to hold up the middle grade actually, because trying to hold all of them would be too much. So here's all the middle grade that I read the second half of the month, along with a handful more of adult books and along with all those other ones that are in other videos. I would love to chat with you about your March reads. What was your favorite book of the month? If you read middle grade or not, what was your favorite? Have you read any of these? Are you adding any of them to your TBR? Let's talk down in the comments below. You guys know I love chatting with you down there. And if you've made it to the end, but you're not feeling chatty and you don't have anything to add in the comments, that's totally fine. I would love to still know that you were here. Go ahead and put the umbrella emoji, because April showers bring May flowers, and we're definitely in April right now. And I just love getting to see who's here, and it does help my channel get seen. It does help my videos get seen by more people. So thank you so much for helping in that way. And that's going to be it for me today. I really appreciate you for spending a few minutes of your day with me today, and I look forward to chatting with you in another video very soon. Bye.